Hello everyone, welcome to the LT Answers YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Thomas, also known as LT Copywriting or just LT Copy for short, or RHM as in your right-hand man in real estate, depending on what channel you're following and what capacity you're following me. And today I just wanted to go over, introduce you to the three financial people of the world. There's all sorts of different, nuances and types of people that exist in finance. People who spend a little, spend a lot, and everything else. But really, you could break it down to three major archetypes, which is the perpetually broke person, the wealthy person, or the well-off person, and the last one being the highly wealthy person. So while you're going along through the different types, try to see where you lie. See if you're the perpetually broke person, the well-off person, or the highly wealthy person, and we can go over the positive and negatives of each aspect of that financial type of person, and see how we can help you break the mold, or break yourself out of the habits of those types of people. So real quick, I'm going to tell you about the perpetually broke person, which is the guy who lives paycheck to paycheck. Their biggest problem is that they just spend more money than they take in. There's the well-off person who's better at keeping more money in than they spend out. And then there's the final person who is they're good at keeping as much money they put in, but they're also good at investing their money out to ultimately get a return. So they're the best at making money off their money, which is where everybody needs to be eventually if they want to be successful, or at least have enough money to enjoy themselves once it hits the retirement. Because the hardest part of any part of financing is getting cash flow. And you really want to get cash flow, because cash flow is continuous. You always have that money, whereas having a giant pile of money. So the question becomes, would you rather have a giant pile of money, or would you rather have, access to several cash flows? And the reality is I personally would want to have access to multiple cash flows, because the cash flows will continue for the rest of my life, whereas the big pile of money is going to disappear as soon as I start spending it on stuff. So it's better to have both. I wish I could have a big pile of money as well as cash flow, but if I had to choose between the two, I would always choose cash flow over a big pile of money. So that's just a quick blurb on what each one of what the three types of financial people are, and let's get right into the individual types. So let's get started with the perpetually broke person. So everybody knows someone who's perpetually broke. They live paycheck to paycheck. They're always, every time that you ever see them with money, they're spending it. And whenever they don't have money, they're like, oh, let's go do something fun. And then they can't because they don't have the $20 to go, buy a beer, or, pay a ticket to go into a concert. And then everybody knows that person because you text them and say, hey, let's go do something fun. And they're like, oh, no, I can't. I'm broke. And there's three different things that make this person broke. What makes perpetually broke people broke? Sometimes it's economic hardship, but the reality is you see people who are perpetually broke on every pay scale. I've seen people who make, six figures and they're still perpetually broke. Why? It's because they always spend more than they take in. And that's number one of perpetually broke people. They always spend the money. If they have money, they're spending it. If they don't have money, they're waiting or pining for the time that they do have money so they can immediately spend it as quickly as they can. And that's one aspect of why they're perpetually broke, because whenever they have money, they spend it. And whenever they spend it, they usually spend it on, dumb stuff like clothes, toys, ATVs, electronics, basically things they don't really need, and they just pile it up. So that's number one. Number two is they usually have consumer loans. Well, what a consumer loan is basically anything that you buy that you consume and you don't really use it as an investment, such as cars, ATVs, clothing, diamonds, pieces of jewelry, anything that you buy from a store and immediately starts losing value the moment you take it, you purchase it and you take it out of the store. That is a consumer loan. You're basically taking a loan out to purchase something that you're going to consume, and you're never going to get a return on that investment. But you already understand that you're never going to get that return, But the problem with this is whenever you get a consumer loan, you're basically promising away your future wealth. So when someone's perpetually broke, they spend all their money and they don't have any money. But the thing is, whenever they get money, they've already given away, or they've already promised their money away to somebody else. So let's just take, for example, someone who, let's say this person makes $1,000 a month. They make $1,000, but what happens is they go get a consumer loan, they go get a car loan. So now they owe $400 a month to the car company, or they're going to have their vehicle repoed. So now they only really make $600 a month. But then also they go get credit card debt. So then they go buy $600 worth of credit card debt. And next thing you know, they don't pay off all that debt. But that's not including the fact that they got to go buy food and they got to do maintenance on their car and stuff like that. So they end up, so they've only made $1,000, but they've already spent more money on consumer loans to buy things that they want, that they've already spent more money than they have. And that's essentially why they're perpetually broke, because they spend the money they have on things they can't afford, and next thing you know, they're in debt. And that is how they are perpetually broke. And number three is they don't save. So essentially, if you're perpetually broke, it's because you spent all the money that you have and you've given away all of your future wealth or your future ability to make income to somebody else, either for a big screen TV, a new car, or what have you. And that's how you're perpetually broke. So if this sounds like you, or if you know someone who's just like this, there are ways to escape being perpetually broke, but you just gotta learn some discipline. And there's also, like, you can go to biggerpockets.com, as well as, Simple Dollar. There's all sorts of, personal finance blogs and everything. Or you can just continue subscribing to this channel and you can find out how to escape being a perpetually broke person. So let me tell you a quick story about a perpetually broke person that eventually ruined her life. She worked for a grocery store and she had an auto loan, and she worked at the store 40 hours a week, and she was always able to pay her bills because, she was constantly working. But eventually she had a huge mechanical malfunction in her car, and it cost her about, $1,000. Well, instead of that money that, she would have normally have had to spend on the auto loan, she had to use part of that to pay for the mechanical error or the mechanical malfunction. So she got her car fixed for about $1,000, but then she got behind on her car loan. And then they started adding fees onto her car loan, and then, eventually they repoed her car. And because they repoed her car, she could no longer go to work, and she was eventually fired from her job. And because she was fired from her job, she was no longer able to pay rent. So she went from, a stable person, being able to pay all her bills to almost homeless, all within 3 months, because of, she didn't have any money saved up. She was always spending more than she took in, and it was one consumer loan that was really important to her existence, which was her car, ended up getting repoed, and it ruined her life. It ruined her credit, and she's still having the repercussions because they end up repoing her car. They sold her car, and now she still owes the car company like several $1,000s because the car that they sold didn't make up. When they sold her car, it didn't make up for the actual loan amount. So she's homeless. She doesn't have a car, she doesn't have a job, and she still owes several $1,000s to the car company. And that's a big reason you need to avoid being perpetually broke. You need to, subscribe to my channel, or, go to somewhere like, get some financial education and, learn how to escape this cycle. Now let's get into the second financial type of person in the world, which is the well-off person. Now, the well-off person is essentially just the exact opposite of the perpetually broke person. The things that would affect the perpetually broke person, such as like automobile failures, medical bills, like anything that can cause their financials to fall apart, such as those little emergencies, those don't really affect the well-off person. And it's not because the well-off person has more money than the perpetually broke person. It's just that the perpetually broke person just spends all their money and has no savings. Whereas the well-off person, they're a lot more thrifty and they save a lot more. So they'll always have emergency funds. So if these things pop up, such as, automobile crash, like an automobile crash, medical bills, any sort of things, they're easily able to overcome that because they have their emergency fund and like, oh, it's going to be $1,000 bill, and they just, they just pay it and then they forget about it and then they just resave it up. So that's why the well-off person they can come from any income bracket, because I've seen people who make $150,000 a year and they're still perpetually broke, and it's because of they maintain a lifestyle that's unsustainable. They go out, they buy $100,000 cars on loans and they give away all their future so essentially they do all the things that a perpetually broke person does, which is they get consumer loans, so they give away all their future wealth. They spend all the money that's currently in their pocket because it's burning a hole there. And that's why the well-off person is the exact opposite, where they're thrifty, so instead of getting consumer loans, they'll buy things cash. So they'll go on Craigslist or eBay and they'll go out there and they'll buy things on cash because they don't want to give up their future wealth. So they'll just save up the money, they'll buy it, and then they'll save themselves a ton more money just by not buying something new, not by buying it outright and not having to worry about a monthly payment. And that's really the reason well-off people are a lot more better off than the perpetually broke person, because they just know how to manage their money. And another aspect of the well-off person is they also have standard investments. Now, this is different than the highly wealthy person, which is the third type of financial person of the world, which we're going to go in the next segment when we talk about the highly wealthy. But right now, the well-off person, they start or have standard investments. So what happens with well-off people, they know how to manage their money, but then they also have standard investments such as 401ks, stocks, bonds, all of the normal investments that the government tells you should have or your corporation says you should have, and everything else. But I'm not really a big fan of 401ks. I mean, they're great if everything that you put into your 401k that your company is matching it, then that's just free money from your that's just free money from your job that you're leaving on the table by not taking advantage of it. And plus, you can always take that money, you can keep it in there in the mutual funds or what have you, or you can also move it into self-directed IRAs, Roth IRAs. You should always take advantage of the 401k matching, but the reality is that's really the only thing that is really useful or really beneficial to you, because other than that, you're going to be stuck with stocks that are, you're going to be stuck with like 20 mutual funds where you don't really know what you're investing in. It's up to financial advisors who don't really know who you are or what your goals are, and they're just trying to either make the market, beat the market, or you really don't know what they're doing, which is why I'm not really a big fan of 401ks, except for if your company's matching it, because then that's free money. But other than that, you need to be on the lookout. If you're a well-off person, you need to be on the lookout for, what's happening in your 401ks, because it might not be the best for you. And then another big thing about well-off people is everyone assumes that well-off people have good jobs. Now, this isn't, like I said before, this isn't terribly always true, but sometimes, most of the times it is. People with good jobs usually become well-off just because they have more money and they're able to manage it. Now, but the big issue with being a well-off person is that even though you're well-off doesn't mean that you're out of the woods yet, because you can still become bankrupt or perpetually broke just by, major financial cataclysms, such as the 2008 financial crisis. All right, let's have a story time. The 2008 financial crisis wiped out the wealth of a large majority of Americans. A lot of people who were well off. So what happened in the 2000 financial? So the perpetually broke people are always broke. The well-off people aren't broke unless there's some sort of financial cataclysm that causes all financial markets to fall apart. And that's exactly what happened in 2008 with the housing crisis. All mortgages fell apart, mortgages fell apart, rents fell apart, everything fell apart, and it wiped out the wealth that many well-off people had created over those years, because they'd been buying houses, they had all this equity, they were taking advantage of, they're taking advantage of all the opportunities that were available to them at that time. But at the end, it wiped out all of their wealth. They couldn't pay their mortgages. They had to file for bankruptcies, and it really wiped out a lot of well-off people. And why? It's because, well, they ended up losing their jobs. They ended up couldn't afford their mortgages. There was a lot of financing. There's a lot of financial mistakes that, normally would make good investments, but because there was a cataclysm failure through the system, like even then they weren't able to survive, unlike the perpetually broke people. Because although they had emergency funds, the cataclysm was so epic that it overcame, or it was much more than what they were trying to do with much more than the emergency funds that they had. Which is why, even though if you're a well-off person, you still have to be on the lookout for injury, losing your job, such as being laid off, and other financial. Because the biggest problem with well-off people is that usually their major income comes from having a job. But the problem with having a job is sometimes jobs aren't stable. You can lose your job, you can get injured. Sometimes you can even have a death in the family. So if you die, does your family have cash flow, or was the income that they're getting from the main breadwinner who's now dead, is that now that income's gone, what are they going to do? And that's really the big questions you have to ask yourself. Well, what are you going to do? And that's like the con of being a well-off person, is although you were doing hell of a lot better than the perpetually broke person, you still can be affected by major life events as well as cataclysmic financial events. So you also have to be on the lookout, which is why the highly wealthy person, who we're going to talk about next, is the best leveraged or the best hedged to fight against epic cataclysmic financial events, as well as emergency funds. So each one is although it's the three financial types of people, it's essentially a spectrum of the types of people that exist. If you're perpetually broke, it's because you don't manage money. If you're well off, it means you manage money, but you only have really one stream of income, which is usually your job. And then there's the highly wealthy person, who we're going to go talk about right now in the next segment. Now let's talk about the third financial type of person in the world, and that is the highly wealthy individual. Now, what is the major difference between the perpetually broke and the well-off person and the highly wealthy person? Well, essentially, they do everything that a well-off person does. The only thing is that they understand the principles of money, but also investments. Whereas the well-off person, always wants to, has a good job. Their biggest issue is that they don't want to take on any risk. They don't want to have any, alternative investments other than their 401k or their stocks and bonds. Whereas the highly wealthy individual, they not only have a good job, they also have, other things such as cash flow. And like we've been talking about before, it's better to have cash flow than a giant pile of money. Because the giant pile of money, once the giant pile of money's gone, the giant pile of money's gone forever. Whereas as long as you have cash flow, the cash flow, it might run dry, but the reality is it might run forever. And most of the times it does, which is why the major difference between the highly wealthy individual and the well-off person is that they have these multiple streams of income or cash flows that allows them to do what they want. So if they lose their job, unlike the well-off person, if they lose their job, they lose their livelihood and they become in financial straits. Whereas the highly wealthy individual, they don't have these issues, because if they lose their job, they have their rental properties, or they have a business that pays them. They have some sort of passive income, or they have some sort of income that pays them or cash flows to them even when their main flow of income stops. And that's really the major difference between the perpetually broke person, the well-off person, and the highly wealthy individual.
And that brings us to our conclusion of the three financial types of people of the world. Hopefully going through all of these, you kind of see where you lie. You might not be the extreme perpetually broke person, but you might be between perpetually broke and well-off. Or you might even be a little bit between, highly wealthy and the well-off person. So where you lie is more of a spectrum, and not only is it a spectrum, it's kind of a step up in the world. So if you're at the perpetually broke, it doesn't mean you'll always be perpetually broke. And if you do the right things, such as financial discipline, you could one day become well-off. But in conclusion, the biggest thing for perpetually broke people, if you are one of these people, You really need to learn how to, do a budget. You really need to know how to do the offensive and defensive strategies and techniques to, keep your money yours. Because you'd be amazed, because there's no shortage of the amount of people who will relieve you of the money in your pocket. This could be from businesses, this can be from, your friends, your family, it could be anyone, who might need your money. So, a big thing of, if you are a perpetually broke person, you got to learn these strategies, such as, instead of buying Starbucks coffee every other day, you could instead buy Starbucks coffee that you brew yourself and just put it in your coffee cup at home, and then you just take your coffee with you. There's all sorts of ways, instead of spending all your money, or instead of eating out for lunch every day, which could be several hundreds of dollars every month or every 6 months. You can instead pack your lunch. There's all sorts of crazy ways if you're perpetually broke. Yeah, you just need to figure out a way to break the cycle. And another great way to do that is to pay yourself. So unlike my friend who had a car loan, couldn't pay her car loan, had her car repoed, then lost her job, and then she couldn't pay her bills to stay in her apartment anymore, and then she lost her apartment and she was pretty much homeless. So instead of you experiencing that, whenever you get paid, if you're a perpetually broke person, you need to take that money and put it into an account, such as a savings account, and you'll never touch it. So let's just say you take 10% of your income. So if you get $1,000, a month, you put $100 in the savings account every time you get paid that $1,000. And then after 6 months, you'd have $600 in there. So if there was a problem with your car, instead of, it becoming a major life event, it's like, oh, okay, I spent $400 to get my car fixed, and now I can keep my job, and, you just replenish the money in the emergency fund. These are great little strategies. If you are perpetually broke, you can use these to build your financial discipline, so you don't have to be perpetually broke anymore. And once you've mastered, these financial disciplines, eventually you'll realize that you're, starting to become well off. And once you become well off, you got a better job, you still have that big pile of emergency money. You can actually have a second pile of money, which is for, investments. So even though you're well off, you can afford your things, you can send your kids to college, and you can start, building more wealth for yourself. And that's the big thing for you. That's why you're creating this second pile of money. You have the one pile of money for emergencies, and then you have the second pile of money for investments, which is why if you are a well-off individual, it's high time to start, thinking about how to teach yourself to take calculated risks. And as we discussed before with the 3 principles, you got to learn how to take calculated risks, you got to learn how to hire somebody if you don't know how to do it, and also you need to, learn to invest in only things that you know, and if you don't know, you got to learn. And if you can't learn, then you got to hire someone. It's all circular with how you can, learn how to invest. But once you become well off, the big thing is learning how to, even though if you have a really great job, you might not have that great job forever. The big thing with that is you have one major source of income, and the big thing then is now to have 2 or 3. So that's why you're creating that second pile of money, to create cash flow. And once you have 4 or 5, you will now soon become a highly wealthy individual. And let's say you have 5 different. That could be rental income from rental properties. That could be dividends from stocks. That could be, you could run a small business, or you could own a small business. Like, there's all sorts of cool ways that you can, once you become well off, you can invest into these things. But once you're highly wealthy, there's actually a really big difference between the well off and the highly wealthy individual. And the major reason is because the highly wealthy individual has such amount of wealth that they have access to investments that the perpetually broke and even the well-off person don't have access to. And the reason because they have to pay a ticket price to even have access to such things, or just to have such a massive amount of money that even if they're only making a 3 to 5% return on that money, they're still making $500,000 because they have so much money locked up or invested. And that's like a big thing, and that's why, if you're perpetually broke, you're trying to become well off. Once you're well off, you're really trying to become the highly wealthy individual. And that's really the conclusion. So hopefully you figured out where you lie on the scale and kind of understand where you need to go from here. If you're perpetually broke, you need to learn some financial discipline so you can, become well off. And once you're well off, you need to learn how to, invest correctly. So invest correctly so you can become wealthy and avoid, any sort of, major life events such as injury, losing your job, or you start to lose your health. So that's the major thing. And once again, thank you for watching my video. And if you're interested in more little blurbs or ways to make money or becoming a young professional, just hit me up on www.ltanswers.com or www.rhmreal.com, which is Right Hand Man Real Estate. Because not only do I do these videos for my website or for my copywriting and my ebook business, I also do this for my own property management landlording business. So I'm going to keep doing this every week or every 2 weeks. So subscribe, let me know what you think, and as always, thank you so much.